Today I'm going to tell you the story of my bad acid trip and what I consider to be the most terrifying experience of my life. When you think of what it's like to be truly frightened, scared for your life, the first thing that comes to mind is the physical, being hurt or killed. Images of a building on fire, a gun to your head, a car accident might be one of the first things that comes to mind. But what if this understanding was wrong, or at the very least, incomplete? What if what makes you question your sanity and keeps you up at night did not necessarily have to be physical? Would that make it any less valid? Any less terrifying? Well, what was most terrifying to me was not physical, but instead, all inside my head. This might sound like complete nonsense to anyone that has never tripped, but you quickly learn that what's inside your head is every bit as real as what is outside, and sometimes even more so. It's a difficult concept to try to explain, but once you understand, you really understand. Psychedelics change your very definition of real. What isn't physical doesn't make it any less real. In fact, it's as real as the room you're in. Anyway, this experience started off like any other night when I trip. I had maybe 3 or 4 experiences under my belt and thought I was ready to up the dose a little bit. Nothing crazy. I'm careful and detailed when it comes to stuff like this. I dropped around 11 p.m. I spent the next 2 to 3 hours pretty much just laying in bed, listening to music, and tripping out. I alternated between deep trains of thought and just enjoying the psychedelic visuals. The slightly higher dose definitely made for some cool fractals. At about 3 a.m., I noticed the visuals losing intensity to the point of almost being non existent. I'm 4 hours into the trip at this point. I handled the dose with flying colors. I knew the peak had passed and everything else from this point would be a gradual decline. Minutes go by. I start tossing and turning in bed because I was pretty much done with the trip. It was no longer as interesting, but I knew I still had hours ahead of me. Suddenly, an idea pops into my head. I had a weed pen in the drawer next to me. Now I knew that mixing LSD with weed was a decision not to be taken lightly, but given my success in handling a higher dose, I concluded that adding weed wouldn't be that different. I decided that I would do it, just one hit, and see what happens. I roll over on my stomach, reach for the pen, and take a hit. I hold it in for a second or two, slowly exhaling. Time felt different. I lost all concept of where I was. Suddenly, I see myself from above, and then I see myself seeing myself from above. But with each interval, I become smaller and smaller. Holy fucking shit. This is what an out of body experience is like, I thought to myself. I smile slightly, drop the pen, and go back into bed to get myself comfortable. Fear starts to set in. Holy fuck, that was intense. I start to text my friend. I tell him about how badly I fucked up. I spend the next few minutes having an entire conversation with him through text. After a few minutes, he's there in the room with me. We talk. At this point, I don't even notice that I'm completely hallucinating his presence in the room, or even that it's completely out of the ordinary. I tell him that he needs to help me. In that same instant, I'm in a white room. So white, it starts to hurt my eyes from the brightness. I meet this little creature. He doesn't talk like you or I would, but I still somehow understand. He laughs mostly. A little creepy, but he hasn't done anything that would make me question his intentions. I was never able to draw how he looked, but this drawing from Alex Gray gets pretty damn close. He has a wide Joker smile. All he would do was laugh. Time started to feel like days, and then days turned into years. At this point, I'm transitioning between the trip and reality back in my room. There would be small moments where I could break free and understand it was only a trip, but just as quickly I would be taken right back in the white room. Both realities seemed equally real. I spent the next few minutes battling back and forth like this. Every time I would return to my room, I would hold on for dear life because I knew it was only a matter of time before I had to go back. The little creature starts to talk to me, but not in words. He would just place ideas inside my head. Stuff like, how do you know that your reality is the real one? What if the acid you just took is what allowed you to break free? What if this is true reality? After a few minutes of these twisted thoughts, I start to come up with my own theories. There was no quote unquote I. It was always all inside my head, created here, in this white room. The reality back home was an illusion. At this point, I'm questioning my sanity. Which reality is the real one? And which one am I crazy? These ideas shook me to the core. Had I been insane my entire life? My family? Friends? All in my head? I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs. I wanted to die. I couldn't bear the thought. I accepted this as the new truth. I finally saw reality for what it was, thanks to the acid. But before I could finish that thought, I realized that acid eventually wears off. My stomach sank. The second this trip ends, I'll be forced back into bed, into this completely fake reality created in my mind. And worst of all, I wouldn't have the slightest clue. I'm jolted back into my bed reality. I'm terrified. I start to assure myself to help me make it through all this. Remember, you only took acid. It'll wear off soon. It'll wear off soon.
You'll be okay.
You'll be okay.
You're not crazy.
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 Over in my head.
Over and over in my head. I start to hear the little creature laughing. It's making fun of me. It knows. Both realities are starting to blend in now. I look at my phone. 3:15 a.m. Desperately, I remembered that I was texting my friend for help. He must know by now that something is wrong. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. As it turns out, I didn't have a conversation with him. I didn't even ask him for help. The last text was from me a few minutes ago. It simply read, "Hey." No reply. I wanted to blow my brains out. I couldn't handle it. What was real, what wasn't. At that moment, I couldn't recognize it, but I was in a thought loop. I wanted the drugs to wear off so that I could return back to real life in my bed. But what if that was exactly what I was supposed to avoid? What if instead I should be fighting to stay in the white room? Or what if not? Each possibility seemed equally possible. If I chose to stay in my bed, that was proof that I should actually not. If I chose to stay in the white room, that was proof that I should actually not. I had gone mad. I was in hell. It felt like years were going by. I look at my phone. 3:15 a.m. I'm back in the white room. I'm sitting on a chair, the creature laughing in the center. He seems friendlier now. He offers to help me solve all my problems. We begin to telepathically communicate, having multiple conversations at once. The conversations are happening so quickly that I can barely make sense of it. The creature would solve one problem and move on to the next just as quickly. I couldn't make sense of the solutions, but I knew they made sense, if that makes any sense. Surely hours must have passed by now. I'm jolted back to bed. I look at my phone again. Still 3:15. Why was time frozen? Does that mean that bed reality was also a hallucination? I'm back in the white room. The creature wants me to give him more and more problems to solve, but I'm tapped. He solved everything that I could ever imagine. There was nothing else. He gets angry at this response. He wants more. I'm scared again. I throw the chair at him, my clothes. I have nothing else to give, I say. But he wants more. I realize what he means. He wants my life. I start to scream and cry. I've gone insane. I've broken my brain. I'm stuck here forever. I'm back in bed. I look at my phone. 3:14 a.m. 3:14 a.m. What the fuck does that mean? This can't be real. None of this can be real. What have I done? My bed sheets are soaked in sweat, completely soaked. Fear will do that to you. I've never sweat like that in my life. I was ready to die. I just wanted it to end. This back and forth continues for the next half hour, but it quite literally feels like years. Much of it I can't even describe in words. It goes beyond that. You just had to have been there. I look at my phone, 3:45. Finally, some sort of anchor. Reality's finally starting to bleed back into the picture. Slowly, I start to put the pieces back together. I'm able to form a coherent thought. I can finally understand language. I'm pulling myself back up from the depths of insanity. I feel hundreds of emotions, but above all, some relief. I look at my phone again, 3:48. Everything's going to be okay. I text my friend, for real this time, and then I fall asleep. This experience is something I will never forget. I still struggle to make sense of it. For the next weeks that followed, I still struggled with severe anxiety attacks. I questioned my reality still. Was I real? What if I fucked up and chose to stay in the wrong reality? With time, these feelings have greatly dissipated, but the truth is, I'd rather they had not been there at all. If there's one positive from this whole experience, is that ever since then, my brain has felt much stronger than ever before, if that makes any sense. If I was able to make it back from the depths of insanity and be okay, then this normal, boring reality should be a breeze.